Newsfirst, Newsline.
Hello there, very good evening. Welcome to another edition of Newsline Live. We've been discussing extensively about the Broadcasting Regulatory Commission. However, this is not still even in the form of a bill or an act. This is just a draft, as the government claims, and wants the general public to decide on whether or not this should be made into law. To discuss these matters and much more that's happening in the political sphere here in Sri Lanka, we have with us today Professor Charitha Herath, former chairman of court, current parliamentarian. Professor, you've been quite vocal against this bill, or this draft, let's say. But unfortunately, this draft is being brought into Parliament and supported in Parliament and canvassed for, not Parliament, I mean, among the general public, and then canvassed for by the same colleagues that you contested the election with, I mean, you joined Parliament with. They were once your colleagues, they were once people who you saw eye to eye with. Where do you think the disconnect happened? Like, how come they bring out a draft like this and you are sitting on the opposite side of the table?
Well, I think we need to look at why this bill or why this white paper came in this given time. This is one issue that we just need to look at. Number two is that what is the content of this whole thing and what they are going to do with this piece of legislation. So these two things are very important than the people who are behind this. I think now, though we were part of the government previously, now we are independent and we are in the opposition. And we are looking at things from very broader perspective, not from the opposition's or the government point of view. We should be more open when we are making laws for the country. One thing...
so in that respect, this is a good step, because the government could have jolly well brought this up as a bill, called it an emergency bill, like what they did for the Port City Commission bill, and passed it through Parliament quite easily. But they didn't do that. They bought a draft. So this is good in that way.
But this is not easy things for them to do like that.
Okay.
Number one, Shalan, here in this country, we don't have a legal background, legal formality for giving licenses for broadcasting institution. That is one thing that you have to look at.
Okay.
That I agree with anybody that we need to have a law in broadcasting field. That
to
is
grant
true.
the license.
Right. But we have tried this issue in 1997 and 2018, 2019, many different times to form this kind of bill, but it was not that much easy. So at the moment, we have 33 terrestrial television licenses and 25 broadcasting licenses given by two different acts, using two different acts. One was the 1966 Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation Act, and the other one is Sri Lanka Rupawahini Corporation Act in 1982. There are two different avenues of these two acts where Secretary of the Ministry could write on behalf of the Minister the license to the private parties. So that is the place where we just put these licenses in order according to the law. So now we have given 25 radio license, 33 terrestrial Rupawahini license, so terrestrial television license. So these licenses were given different times in different structure.
And different conditions.
Different conditions, and we don't have proper framework for giving licenses to private parties. So that issue should be addressed, number one. Number two, there are two ways of this license. One is for the contents, like the contents of the broadcasting. Then other one is the frequency. The frequency license will be given by the TRC under TRC Act. That is a separate different arm. So here the rationale for developing this law is to have a common legal tool for giving licenses to private parties. And regulating the broadcasting platernity, broadcasting contents of this institution.
So when you say regulating the content, do you mean telling media institutions what they can publish and what they can't?
Actually, that is what they are now trying to do.
That is what they're trying to do. But when you say we need laws to regulate frequencies, what do you mean?
No, that regulate frequencies and regulate contents. There are two things.
Okay. Right.
Now the regulating contents means that you need to have a kind of framework in order for private parties to exercise their freedom, exercise their work in the channels. But here we don't have that kind of things. We don't have code of conducts. We don't have any ethics. We don't have any legal framework for any channels to adhere. That is one issue. But this piece of legislation, or this draft, actually many people are saying many things on this. I think this is a draft of an act. It is not a white paper. It is not just a discussion paper as many people suggest. This is a draft of an act, and we need to take it very seriously. It is not a simple just discussion piece of paper as some ministers are saying. Here there are many things that we just need to look at from the industry. The first one is that how this commission will be formed. There are appointees. There are 5 members of the commission, and out of that 5, 2 will come from the government ex-officers, like direct from the government, Director General of the TRC and the Secretary of the Ministry of Mass Media.
The Director General of the TRC, SL, and the Secretary to the Ministry of Mass Media, more or less, are appointed by the President.
Yeah, they are also appointed by the President, and they are coming into this commission as 2 members out of 5. Out of 5. Now, other 3 will be appointed by the President, and out of these 5, 1 could be the President of this commission, the Chairman of this commission. That will also be appointed by the President.
Professor, the issue here is quite clear. The President cannot have power to appoint people to regulate the media, because and also the President has the power to remove anyone without giving reasons, by simply giving notice to the Constitutional Council. So that is clearly an issue, because we cannot let the executive of Sri Lanka, who is already one of the most powerful presidents as far as the far-reaching powers that the executive presidency gives him goes, to regulate the media as well. So are you of the opinion, Professor, that there shouldn't be any regulation here, or can this draft be fixed if the appointment and removal of these commissioners is fixed, and certain other things?
No, I think, there are 2 observations coming into this draft. One is that, some people are arguing that this completely stopped by doing this thing, and to have a common consultative process from the industry to form this kind of law. That is number 1. Number 2, we have to see whether we could make use of this draft and to change some of the provisions that they have suggested in order to get a kind of broader piece of legislation. So that is number 2. I don't know which road that people should take, but in terms of my position, I think we need to just to leave this complete draft out and to form a consultative parliamentary committee to draft this piece of legislation. That is one way to start with. And also we have previous draft which was done in 2018, which is rather better than this one.
Okay.
And there are some provisions which are very important for this industry. We just need to get those things back into this thing. Even I agree with my friend Dr. Rohan Samarajiva, who suggested that 2 drafts, this one and 2018 draft, should be tabled. Then we could have a discussion on both drafts, which is very, very good, I think, because it has addressed some of the important areas than this draft. I think this was done by completely a legal kind of guys, and they have looked at the constitutions and some of the part of this legal sections of this, but not on the industry sections, like, this is not an industry which is you can regulate in this kind of manner.
So, Professor, now we saw the Anti-Terrorism Act coming out. Then we saw the rehabilitation bill that initially proposed to rehabilitate, I think the word that was used was a very broad word, people who are, lost or extreme or need rehabilitation, but that was all removed. So at a time when now Sri Lanka was
anti-corruption bill, which is going to come next week.
Right.
Yeah, that is also going to come. Now there are different kind of draft were tabled, and sometime those went to the courts, and Supreme Court has given more than 30-40
special determinations,
and observational kind of changes. Then they had to, like, some of these bills were kept out, and some are taking with those changes. I think now in next week we are going to debate on the anti-corruption bill, which is going to take on next Wednesday. I don't know whether the government has taken all the Supreme Court determinations into consideration. We are going to look at it when they are going to present the changes in the committee stage. We thought that will be taken into considerations, and actually this is a time where many kind of weak legal documentations are filed on behalf of the government. In previously there were many other kind of ways those were corrected within the government frameworks before submitting into the parliament. But this time it seems those are directly coming into the parliament and coming into the discussions, and then they had to change, almost all the main parts of those acts. That is a new development from the government side. I don't know what went wrong and who did wrong, and I don't know any of these things. And one thing is for sure, that the legal draftments, the service of the legal draftment departments seems not taken that much productively in this time. I don't know whether they were being sidelined. I don't know what happened, but it seems there are some lacunas and there are some issues within the government setup of drafting these bills. I don't know what is the reason and why it happened like this.
So you're saying that the bills that are coming out are contravening the constitution,
many
those kind of issues.
Right. Actually, I think one bill has 90 changes from this Supreme Court determinations, and some others are more than 30. Actually, we know that there are some areas where Supreme Court determination gives us to relook. That is true. But here, sometime almost all the main parts of the said draft were,
thrown out by the Supreme Court.
Thrown out by the determinations.
Well, Professor, interesting point in our conversation. We're discussing the Broadcasting Regulatory Commission bill, but we're taking a look at it in the wider political perspective here in Sri Lanka with the socio-economic crisis that hit the country last year and where we find ourselves right now here today. We'll be back with more after this short commercial break. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Newsline live.
Newsfirst, Newsline.
President and ruling faction leaders meet again. Sanat Nishanta puts forward condition if SLPP must remain in the government.
ශ්‍රී ලංකා පොජ්ජන පෙරමුණ හැටියට අපේ දිස්ත්‍රික් නායකයින්ට කොහොමද සලකන්නේ කියන කාරණයක් එක්ක තමයි අපි මේ ආණ්ඩුව ඇතුළේ කොච්චර කල් ඉන්නවද කියලා තීරණය වෙන්නේ.
Telecom trade unions stress that privatizing SLT is a threat to national security. Passport applications to be processed online from Thursday. Army doctors enter Guinness World Records, removing the world's largest kidney stone.
When a heart attack strikes, every minute makes the difference between life and death. With the right care and treatment at the hand of the most skilled surgeons and medical professionals. With the perfect environment for recovery. Darden's Heart Centre, dedicated to you.
සංචාරක හා හෝටල් ක්ෂේත්‍රයේ දෙස් විදෙස් රැකියා අපේක්ෂාවෙන් සිටින ඔබ වෙනුවෙන් MIM වෙතින් නවතම පාඨමාලා දෙකක්.
Certificate course in food and beverage, certificate course in kitchen.
මෙරට ප්‍රමුඛ පෙළේ හෝටල් තුළ ප්‍රායෝගික පුහුණුව සමග සුපවේදය පිළිබඳ ඔබේ කුසලතා ඔප්නංවා ගැනීමට අවස්ථාව.
Call 076-8822-707 now. Register via www.mim.lk. MIM Fox Faculty.
Newsfirst, Newsline.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsline Live. We're in discussion with Professor Charitha Herath. He's the former chairman of COPE and also a current parliamentarian. Professor, before we get into the Broadcasting Regulatory Commission bill, just a few questions. We see that the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna is experiencing a form of a resurgence. We can see several rallies taking place. We can see individuals like Johnston Fernando and many other leading, Sanath Nishantha, coming out and making statements saying the SLPP is going to be the driving force in forming the next government, in appointing the next president. You yourself being a former member of the, or current member still of the SLPP and coming into parliament on the SLPP ticket. But the unfoldings as far as the party goes, does this make you happy?
I don't know actually what they are doing. I mean, that is any political party should organize their cadres in the ground. I think that is what they are doing. And we have substantial criticism on what they do and what they have done when the Gotabaya Rajapaksa left the country. And in our reading that they have completely betrayed the people's mandate which we have taken at that time. So that was the main criticism that we have given them. We thought that the caretaker or the president appointed by the parliament should be a member of the SLPP, but they thought that it should not be so, and then they have selected person from outside. So we think that they have completely gone against the party mandate which we have taken in 2020. So now, after that many things happen, we all know, then now they have started organizing the ground. That is what now you are showing, you are saying. I don't have any issue with that, and they have to do what they need to do. But in our position is that the SLPP and UNP now merge in the government, and they both are now governing this country together, which was not mandated by the people. So we think that whatever the election which is going to come first should be the benchmark for all of us to look at, that what is the people's position. End of the day, this is a country which was governed by the people's mandate, not by a family or not by any person's kind of intentions, mandate. So we want government to allow people to decide what type of government they want, what type of president they want, and what is the choice that they need to make. So you need to allow them to do that. That is our main kind of challenge for the government that go to the election. But they have postponed the election which was coming in. Now they are saying that there will be election in next year, and we are working through all this thing.
But Professor, now while Sri Lanka tries to navigate itself through this socio-economic crisis that we find ourselves in right now, looking forward towards an election, we look at Sri Lanka is big on party politics. Everything works on party politics. Say, for example, if I myself want to contest, I can't contest alone. I need to contest with the party if I have any chance of getting into parliament or whatever governing body. So, Professor, looking at the parties that are there in Sri Lanka and what has really happened, do you think, excluding your party, of course, I mean, of course, you can't comment on that, but the other parties in Sri Lanka, do you honestly believe that there are any parties that follow principles and policies or have set principles and set policies that they will enact, implement once they come into power?
Well, we all are saying that we are going to implement the principles and the promises that we have given to the people. That is the basic agreements that all parties are having and all parties are saying. But there is a substantial issue in Sri Lankan party politics, that the inner party democracy. Inner party democracy is one thing that no party people are talking, like they are not supposed to talk all these things, and the decisions are taken by the sometime
higher-ups,
one man or sometime group of people who owns the party and who owns the whole setup. So sometime one family, that was not even today, even 1960s, 70s, that happens. So we need to look at how we could democratize whole party structures of the country. And inner party democracy is a must and is very important reform that we need to suggest for the health of democracy of this country.
All right, Professor, we're in the final 5 minutes of this show. Let's get back to the Broadcasting Regulatory Commission. Now, I think you've taken a look at the objectives of this draft. And by looking at the objectives of the draft, we can get kind of a feel of what really this draft, once it becomes an act, is aiming to achieve. So looking at the objectives, Professor, what do you think it aims to achieve?
I think that is one area we need to be very careful. This the Article 5 or the Clause 5 of this draft bill gives a whole set of objectives of this new commission. Objective A is to ensure that the broadcasting services shall provide people true and accurate information as guaranteed by the Constitution. Now, like, you can put this kind of terminology for any other things, but not the media industry. Now, media is giving facts and opinion together in their broadcastings. You are not doing like courts of the judiciary.
I mean, Professor, even in courts, there are enough of people who speak inaccurate things, even under oath.
Now here, the understanding assumption was that the media should give the factual statements than the opinions. Like, there are two different kinds.
So Professor, let me just give you an example, and since you were a former secretary of the media ministry, you'd be able to interpret this for me. Say, for example, there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation that is spoken of in Parliament.
Right.
There were individuals who claimed that Sri Lanka has no crisis. Back in January 2022, when most of the opposition MPs were like, we're going to crash. There were people who stood up and said, no, this is great, we are great, the president is amazing, we're going to have a fruitful year this year. Then also we saw at the end of the year 2021, people who, astrologers coming on TV and saying, 2022 is going to be an amazing year, you're going to see this and that and all of that. So are all of those inaccurate information according to this draft?
Yeah, now like I don't know actually what they are thinking, accurate and kind of like true and accurate according to the constitutions. What my point is that media should give one hand facts, other one is the opinion. You have to have two different kind of informations. But if you are expecting media to give only facts, then you can't run a media stations. So that is one thing. Like when you are making laws like this, then I don't know how media could perform in their duties. The factual statements and opinions are there. These two sections should be looked at. Then there are some other objectives where they says that this commission should ensure whether the media stations are the broadcasting services are not making kind of
damaging
statements on national economy. So I mean, now suppose trade union activism and all these kind of things are related with economy. So if you are showing trade union actions, and if that related with troubling the national economy, then you will be breaking the objectives of this act. So you can't legalize this manner, this industry. That is the main thing. I think we just need to be very broad perspectives on these objectives. Like this objective part here gives a completely different wrong impression on the legalizing project of this act. I think what they wanted to do is to just to put a kind of objectives and to catch the channels that you have broken, you have just damaged, you have forgotten these objectives, then you will not be able to run the stations. So every year they need to renew the licenses, and you have to go into their queue to get the licenses renewed. Then in that time you have to be answerable for these things.
Professor, there are those in the final few minutes of our show, there are those who compare this act or the eventuality that it will bring, if it is passed, to the situation of media institutions or the media in a country like North Korea. Do you agree with that proposition?
I also think, this is going to be a kind of bad piece of legislation, and if you get this legislation passed, then the media should be controlled by the state. And that state is like North Korea. That is true. The democratic values which we have protected and which we have maintained in last 70 years are very important part of our democracy, are very important part of our lives. But if you are approving this kind of legislations, I think that democratic culture will completely get into a very bad shape.
Well, Professor, that's kind of the last thing we need right now, because our economy is in a very bad shape. We're going through a socio-economic crisis. We had a massive political crisis last year. Elections have not yet been held. So while the political crisis is still dormant, it very, very much exists. Of course, at the end of the day, Sri Lanka is a democracy. Democracies are run by the people, a government elected by the people, for the people, government that stands with the people. And the only time that the people of Sri Lanka will get an opportunity to elect such a government is at an election. But when that election will come, Professor, do you know?
I don't know actually. We hope it will come soon.
Thank you very much, Professor Charitha Herath, for joining us on Newsline tonight. Thank you very much to all our viewers out there for tuning in. As always, until we meet again, take care. God bless.